Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. And I finally figured out my newsletter. So sign up for the newsletter on CanadaPoly.com or CanadaReport.co. I'll send a newsletter every week, and I have yet to decide what time of the week to send it. I'm still working out the details. But anyway, it works all now, and I'll be sending it out soon. So sign up today. And you can always join the conversation. You don't have to wait. It's a very active forum that I run at CanadaPoly.com. And the speech is always free. Speaking of free speech, well, first, China, but the influence of China on our free speech. And I think that it bears note that our political parties are not nearly this organized, okay? And that matters. It matters because our political parties are supposed to represent us. They're supposed to be the ones who are dealing with situations like this and maintaining our rights and freedoms. And what's happening is not doing that. That's not happening. It's not happening at all. And the reason that it's not happening, I think, is because of influence like this. Not specifically this influence, but influence like this. And this has been going on for a very long time. In 1997, the Sidewinder report was given to John Chrétien. It was a CSIS and RCMP joint investigation into CCP China's influence in influential Canadian industries. And you should go read it. I've talked about it a lot on this show. Sidewinder, 1997. There's a PDF you can find on Google. Just read the modus operandi, what at that time the investigation had sussed out had been how they do this, how they target an industry, then they identify the top players in the industry, then they buy the biggest one they can, then they expand, and then they bid for government contracts, right? And an example used in the PDF is having government contracts for CSIS buildings and parliament buildings, and like a video surveillance. And if you're the administrator of a thing, you see everything, right? Like you see the passwords, you see everything, right? And anybody who owns a website or something like that should know that the administrator can see everything, right? So if you own a company that is doing video surveillance of Parliament, you have 24/7 video surveillance of Parliament. You have all that data. That's all your data. You've got 100% access to it. You can mirror it. Nobody would know. It's crazy. And that's just one example. Think about what's happened to the lobster fishing. Like, think about what's happened to the lobster industry. Just look into it. It's wild. It is absolutely wild. Okay, CCP Influence. This is CTV News. Activists, experts, and policymakers speak out on Chinese state influence in Canada. Our political organizations, like I just said, they're not this organized. They couldn't possibly be this organized because, I mean, the style of organization, CCP have a very, very clear way of maintaining control of people. And that's outlined in the article here. But our system doesn't allow for that necessarily. Not so much. So it's not as direct. It's not as clean, right? Clean's maybe the wrong word. It's not as forgiving. It's not as cold, not as calculated, right? Clean's just a way of saying it's very neat, right? Neat and tidy. Not perfect. Certainly not. And not necessarily respecting autonomy and one's own opinion, right? Which is valuable. Anyway, let's get into this. Our politicians can't compete with this. They can't compete with this, but this is what we are being forced to compete with, and we're losing. Okay? We're losing. Here we go. Activists, experts, and policymakers are speaking out on what they describe as an ever-growing influence of the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, in Canadian business, academic, and political circles. There's been mounting scrutiny on the CCP's increased flexing of its intelligence muscle since the ascension of President Xi Jinping in 2013. Canada's intelligence agencies have taken the rare step of naming China as a significant threat to the country's sovereignty, with CSIS Director David Vinot publicly saying in February 2021 speech that Canadians are being aggressively targeted by foreign interests, and Beijing was engaged in activities that are a direct threat to our national security and sovereignty. The redacted version of the 2020 National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians, NSICOP, annual report said the threat from espionage and foreign interference is significant and continues to grow, and that intelligence shows that China and Russia remain the primary culprits. In the recent parliamentary meeting of the Special Committee on the Canada-China Relations, CACN, Carolyn Bartholomew, chair of the U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission, testified that the shared values of Canada and the U.S. are increasingly in conflict with and under assault by the CCP. Citing comments from FBI Director Christopher Wray, Bartholomew told the committee that there isn't any country that presents a more severe threat to our innovation, our economic security, and our democratic ideals than China. Hong Kong pro-democracy activists said that they have been wary of reporting harassment and silencing tactics to Canadian authorities, and they attribute to CCP agents because of the large-scale infiltration of Chinese state interests in Canada. Under the Chinese Communist regime, Chinese Communist Party members have an executive decision role in all of the companies and NGOs, non-governmental organizations, that operate out of China. Cherry Wong, director of Alliance Canada Hong Kong, explains to ctvnews.ca in an interview. Wong's observations were seconded by Charles Burton, a senior fellow at Macdonald Laurier Institute and an expert in Canada-China relations. United Front Work Department. I just wanted to highlight this because this is how this works, right? There's multiple forks. You attack from multiple areas, but it's all pushing the same message. And different people are pushing the same message. Why? Because they're being instructed to. Okay, here we go. A member of the pro-democracy group Halifax Hong Kong Link, who CTV News has agreed not to name out of fear of reprisals, said a vast CCP network operating in Canada is the United Front Work Department, UFWD. The UFWD was a Leninist concept adopted by the Chinese communists and what Chairman Mao referred to as one of the three treasures of the Dharma, or magical weapons, Burton explained. The other two treasures are the People's Liberation Army and the CCP itself. The UFWD is designed to sort of pave the way for the Chinese Communist Party's longer-term plan, he said. CACN chairperson Bartholomew called the UFWD a major tool for CCP influence, which seeks to co-opt and neutralize sources of potential opposition to the policies and authority of the CCP and influence non-ethnic Chinese foreign elites. The elites are usually politicians or businesses with a lot of social capital and influence and are co-opted through offering them benefits to at least passively collaborate with the purpose of the party, Burton said. We do see the phenomenon of Canadian policymakers who are not aggressive in challenging the threats of the People's Republic of China in Canada, who after retirement receive board memberships and other benefits from the Chinese Communist Party associated with institutions that allow them to prosper in retirement, he said. What did Jean Chrétien do after retiring from being the Prime Minister of Canada? Where did he go again? Could somebody remind me? Have a look. It's very interesting. However, Bartholomew added at the parliamentary meeting that in light of the increased anti-Asian hate crimes, any discussion of UFWD or CCP influence has to be careful always to draw a distinction between the CCP and the Chinese people. Bartholomew said that one major target of the UFWD is Chinese language media in non-Chinese countries, which they seek to co-opt or outright control, ensuring CCP controls the flow of information available to Chinese speakers. She used the example of the China News Service as a media agency controlled by the UFWD. So we'll talk about free speech in the next tab. I've got some more things to show you here, but we're going to go through Canada's and Canadian government's CPSO, so their agencies, doing exactly what is being described here. They're shutting down any dissenting views, and it's very interesting to have CCP style tactics play out in real time in Canadian politics. It's a great example, so I'm going to show you right after this tab. Okay, mobilizing students. The UFWD also offers benefits and support for Chinese students on campuses, Bartholomew said, in return, the students are expected to rebut any criticism of the CCP and encourage the support for the CCP's global rise. She said uncooperative students face leverage, such as threatening family members back in China. Stephanie Carvin, an ex-Canadian Security Intelligence Service CSIS analyst and associate professor of international relations at Carleton University, said tracking and tracing activists by UFWD are difficult. We have seen direct links between Chinese consulate to the embassies and, for example, student groups, Carvin explained, citing the 2019 case of Uyghur activist Rai Turdush speech at McMaster University. Sorry, I've got the name terribly wrong, and I'm just I slaughtered the first name and I kind of got through the second name, the last name. Anyway, WeChat messages from Chinese student groups showed that they coordinated with Chinese officials to try to stymie the talk and report on which academics attended. But other than that, when you see people protesting and stuff like this, how do you prove that they're doing it on behalf of a government or on behalf of a government agency, she said. Burton said there are an awful lot of Chinese diplomats in Canada who have education offices that engage with Chinese students and scholar associations to obtain information about what's going on campus and possibly facilitate the transfer of technologies that have developed on campus to China. They mobilize these students for various forms of protest, and I think it's difficult for a student from the People's Republic of China in Canada to refuse a request of the local consulate or embassy because of the pervasive use of files. The embassy could put a negative note in someone's file that could inhibit their ability to have a successful career in China, said Burton. In an emailed statement to ctvnews.ca, CSIS said they provide regular unclassified briefings to Canadian entities across a number of important sectors, including Canadian universities, research institutes, and businesses to ensure that they're aware of the threat environment. These threats include espionage that targets sensitive data, technological innovation, intellectual as well as foreign interference through the covert manipulation, harassment, and coercion of students and faculty. Wild. Isn't that wild? This is happening in Canada. And more, the tactics are being co-opted to silence people who are speaking out against what's going on in the world regarding COVID-19 or any doctors who have any other ideas about this. Okay, so I'll read this. I think we'll talk about free speech and then there's so much to talk about. Maybe we'll jump over to Rumble early. I don't want to get YouTube angry. No, we'll do the free speech one. It shouldn't get YouTube too angry. We're just talking about being able to articulate dissenting views. Okay, so that's what this is about, not necessarily what the content of those views are. So the CPSO, and the CPSO is, sorry, I lost my mouse. Here it is. The College of Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario, and it regulates the practice of medicine to protect and serve the public interest. Okay, so they've put out this statement, CPSO statement on public health misinformation. Please continue to check our regularly updated COVID-19 resource pages and FAQs for members of the public and physicians. And it says the college is aware and concerned about the increase of misinformation circulating on social media and other platforms regarding physicians who are publicly contradicting public health orders and recommendations. Physicians hold a unique position of trust with the public and have a professional responsibility to not communicate anti-vaccine, anti-masking, anti-distancing, and anti-lockdown statements and or promoting unsupported, unproven treatments for COVID-19. Physicians must not make comments or provide advice that encourages the public to act contrary to public health orders and recommendations. Physicians who put the public at risk may face an investigation by the CPSO and disciplinary action when warranted. When offering opinions, physicians must be guided by the law, regulatory standard, and the code of ethics and professional conduct. The information shared must not be misleading or deceptive and must be supported by available evidence and science. This is a threat to people's jobs. If you don't play ball, we will investigate you. And this is the governing body. If you don't have like a license or if you're not included in this governing body, sometimes you can't get a job in a hospital or you can't get your operating room time or all sorts of different things will be impacted if you can't get this. It's basic, right? They're threatening their jobs. They're saying if you speak out, that's it. Like, we're going to investigate you and stop you from speaking out whatever way we can. That's what this says, okay? So regardless of their full-throated endorsement of science, we've seen what's happened with science in the last little while. Suspect. Kelly Brown says, this is a very scary statement, but it's also encouraging because it might finally give courage to all those physicians that have remained silent to finally let their governing body and the public know that they no longer speak for them. You crossed the line, CPSO. Yeah, maybe. Reminder to Ontario's physicians that the Charter of Rights and Freedoms applies to actions of the College of Physicians and Surgeons. Those who have concerns about this statement should consult with the lawyer. Please do. Please do. It's a very chilling statement. And regardless of... this could go two ways. Kelly Brown thinks that maybe it's going to move people to say, enough is enough. This is nonsense, and you can't silence us. We'll speak out because you've told us that we're not allowed to. And that's risky. It's risky. It might happen. There might be some doctors out there who say, yeah, I agree, and no way, and blah, 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 blah. We'll speak out, right? There have been doctors who've been speaking out through this whole time saying, following the data, the response doesn't make sense to me. And now they're being sanctioned by the by this body, CPSO. And so it's very interesting to see where this will turn next. The tactics are very familiar, but will there be anything done with the charter violations, with the suggestion that there will be an investigation? Wouldn't you imagine that an investigation would be warranted, and then we can get in front of a court all of this data that there are supposedly two sides on? Like you could see, and you could bring into that court the evidence that you wanted to bring into that court and say, see, look, here are all the things that have been working in other places. Why can't we use them here? Why did these bodies say that we can't use them? Maybe that would work. Maybe that would be a pathway to back to having the conversations backed by science. But sticking with speech, the Bill C-10, I think Bill C-10, listen, unfortunately, I think that the Liberals couldn't possibly be this hubristic, this full of themselves, this overconfident. I think you look at this bill and it clearly violates the Charter. It clearly violates 2B. We have freedom of expression. We have freedom of the press. Even if a broadcaster was to be regulated by the CRTC, we should have freedom of the press to continue to share whatever we want. And freedom of expression for things to be uploaded to social media. Most Canadians would expect that, would not expect their government to infringe on that. I think this is a big overreach, and I think they're going to step back on this. But I was saying to somebody else this morning, we're not seeing anybody say, hey, didn't interprovincial borders not have roadblocks? Isn't the history of Canada's not having borders between provinces something to inform what's going forward? Having roadblocks and provincial borders is not consistent with our charter rights. That article didn't get written, right? But something on Bill C-10 did after the CBC was shamed, right? The article talking about having removal of our other basic rights, freedom of movement from our homes, being locked in our homes for extended periods, having very few metrics given by all leadership at every level, 14 months into this thing. There's no articles talking about that. In fact, I saw my mayor, Cam Guthrie, post something about how he was talking with the Prime Minister and Lloyd Longfield, my MP, about homelessness and fixing homelessness in Canada. I was like, hey, did you know that businesses have been closed for like a year? Like, what the heck? What is wrong with you people? They're purposely talking about one thing that is of no consequence. They're running upstairs in a flood to get the curtains, to make sure the curtains are okay on the second floor when the flood's in the basement. That's what they're doing. They're purposely not dealing with the problem. The businesses have been closed for a year. We don't have a solution for this. The solution is lock down your population, and this is okay? What? So I think the Liberals can't possibly be that stupid to think that they're going to pass this bill. And I think that it's a proxy fight to channel that anger of all that stuff that's been pent up for the last year. Like, you incompetent fools, what have you done for the last year? And channeled into this. And I think that they knew that they would never get this bill done. So they're going to walk it back. And it's not going to go through. But there still won't be any articles about the loss of freedom across Canada. Okay, that's what I think this is. However, we have to go through this pantomime. We have to go through this backlash, because otherwise they will. If they can get it through, they'll say, sure, great. More power? Great. Wonderful. We'll do that. They will. They'll do it. If we let them, they will do it. I'm not saying that they won't. Like, you don't art of the deal. If you ask for $100 million and then the ad agency comes back and says, you want $111 million? And you go, oh, okay, yeah, yes, I do. That would make the campaign run much smoother, right? You take it. You take the win, right? But when they push back, you push back and take what you originally thought you wanted, right? So anyway, this is the government fighting against, or the opposition actually fighting against Bill C-10. Here we go.
Mr. Speaker, in what country does the government control what people post on the internet, what they can see, and punishes content that does not match, quote, the government's vision, closed quote? China, Russia, and soon to be Canada, because that is precisely what the Liberals' government's Bill C-10 does. Comments about matching the government's vision are not those of a Chinese communist official, but that of the Minister of Heritage. Former CRTC Commissioner Peter Menzies has characterized this bill as a full-blown assault on freedom of expression and the foundations of democracy. It is no wonder this Prime Minister has expressed admiration for China's perfect dictatorship. This bill is Orwellian, it's undemocratic, it's un-Canadian, and it must be stopped.
So, some opposition to this evil speech bill. This is a disaster. This interview, holy cow. It's fun to watch. It's a fun disaster to watch. So the beginning of this is Guilbeault talking to the interviewer, and I can't remember the guy's name, about how this is really a bill about Canadian heritage, and it's about them being a broadcaster, and if they're broadcasting Canadian in Canada, they should be prioritizing Canadian things, and it's really not about censorship or moderation of content being posted by people at all. And the interviewer absolutely eviscerates him, and then Guilbeault can't recover. He doesn't answer the question at all, and it's fun to watch. Here we go.
Obligations, spending requirements. It's not about content moderation.
So I'm going to flip the question for a moment here, Minister, because it was important enough to put that exclusion there in the first place. Now it's gone. Why was it important in the first place to put it there?
We're not interested. I mean, it's not what the bill is about.
I mean, I hear you saying you're not interested, but there literally was an exclusion that was put in the original iteration of that bill, the thing that was reviewed, and then it got to committee, and bingo, bango, bongo, the exclusion is gone. So why was it important to put it there in the first place, such that now the committee has removed it?
Well, I mean, the committee decides what they want. The bill, first of all, the committee hasn't even finished doing its work in terms of the amendments. So we don't have a full picture of what the bill will look like when it comes back to the House of Commons for third reading.
Would you like to see the exclusion back in there?
It's not necessary. I mean, so
if it's not necessary, why was it there in the first place?
Well, you know, we've worked on this for many months. We came up with what we thought would be the best possible bill, but
okay, he never answers the question. Squirm, 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 squirmy, squirmy, squirm. Why did you put it there in the first place? He said it was important for this exclusion, the exclusion for keeping out user-generated content like this video out of the whole bill. That was important at one point, and now it's not important at all. What's the difference? Oh, but, blink, blink, blink. And he's chewing his bottom lip the whole time, like during the question. He's like, and I mean, it's funny. I mean, it's funny to watch them squirm because I think they know. I think that they knew from the beginning that this was a massive overreach and it was not going to go anywhere, right? Like, I think they knew. And I think that he knew the whole time that it was going to be disastrous interview after disastrous interview. They'll walk it back, but they still don't have to deal with the removal of our civil liberties. They don't have to deal with that. Nobody's talking about that. Oh, we're helping the homeless. We're using your tax dollars to keep us safe, right? No more outbreaks in the homeless communities, right? How many people died in homeless communities? What are the numbers there? Right. Here's big tech falling in line with the CPC censorship. CCP, not CPC. Sorry. Joe Rogan, who's not a doctor, says Yahoo, gives terrible vaccine advice. However, 5 things Bill Gates wants you to know about COVID-19 variants. Isn't Bill Gates not a doctor too? Not a doctor. Jagmeet Singh says, these are tough times for a lot of people. Many Canadians are struggling. They're anxious about their jobs, their families, and the health of the people they love. I asked Justin Trudeau to extend today's tax deadline as one small way to help alleviate the stress Canadians are feeling. He refused. But he's going to prop up the Bill C-10. He was like, yeah, we could see what we could do about that. We'll see what we can do about that. How about the tax thing there, Mr. Trudeau? Bull. Absolute bull. So maybe he'll help with the limiting of our free speech to get a tax deferral. Right. Righto. Just working for Canadians there, Jagmeet. Okay, proof of life. Doug Ford is alive and he's okay and he's doing a press conference. Oh my goodness. I heard there was lots of rumors flying around. Rumors enough that they had to activate global news to confirm that Doug Ford was okay. He confirmed it, but Doug Ford didn't do anything and then came out yesterday and did this press conference, right? There you go, virtual press conference. The interesting part about this is, well, I mean, Doug Ford is okay. And now he's wanting to limit the land borders, right? And limiting the land borders. That was yesterday's news. And as well, during the presser, and we'll talk about vaccines in the redacted part of the show on the other video networks, the Rumble and Odysee and BitChute. But he also said during the presser that there were vaccine resistant variants. And he said it 3 times. Here's Roman Baber. During today's press conference, Doug Ford repeated the phrase vaccine resistant variants 3 times. Will that mean a permanent lockdown or just permanent closure of our provincial and international borders? This is a major escalation. Yeah. And here's the land border. Ford says if he was in power, he would close Pearson Airport. He says he's worried about variants becoming resistant to the vaccine and a 4th wave. He also wants tougher restrictions at land borders. So now the 4th wave has been introduced formally. Yesterday, it was teased by CBC and then deleted. But Doug Ford is talking about a 4th wave and all sorts of vaccine resistant. If the virus is resistant to vaccines, is there a use case for the vaccine? No, I can't imagine there being a use case for the vaccine if the variants are vaccine resistant. The NDP is accusing the Premier moving away from COVID, because we'll get back to the vaccines again, like I said in the other part of the show. NDP is accusing the Premier of lying about what he and his office knew of Rod Phillips' travels. Premier Ford said today, no one ever told us that he is leaving the country. Doug Ford and his team knew Rod Phillips was on vacation from day one. From December through his press conference today, Ford and his government have continued to lie about what they knew. Here's the email. It says, just wanted to flag that Minister Phillips will not be in Toronto and not available in person between the dates of December 12th and January 19th. He will be completely available via teleconference, Teams, Zoom, and etc., and will be attending cabinet meetings virtually. I think he will let the Premier know directly as well. Let me know if you have concerns or questions. So that does not say he will be out of the country. It just says that he will be unavailable and not available to meet in person, but will be available on Zoom. You could conclude anything you wanted from that. Like you could conclude that he may be up north at a cottage or something to that effect. But definitely you wouldn't know from that email that he was out of the country, right? Doesn't say out of the country for a little while, just says unavailable for in-person meetings. That's interesting, right? Not the smoking gun that I think the NDP thought they had necessarily, but very interesting anyway. Here's Don Martin. Busted. Doug Ford's top staffers knew Rod Phillips would be away ahead of St. Bart's vacation, email show. It's not the same though, right? Being away and being in St. Bart's. Those are the different things. Being away wasn't a problem necessarily. People were going to their cottage over Christmas. Doug Ford's gone up to change the pipes or whatever, right? Make sure the frozen pipes didn't get too frozen-y. I don't know, whatever it was. So it wasn't necessarily as damning as they are making it claim or making it sound. Anyway, regardless. This is interesting. 2 things to think about this for me. Lisa Raitt is kicked off of her riding by the new candidate. So Lisa Raitt lost her election last year to the Adam Van person, Olympic kayaker. And so she lost her riding and she was hoping to mount another attempt, I guess, and re-win it back. But this candidate came in and decimated her and removed her. Now, to me, that says you could take control of the Conservative Party this way, right? Like you could basically primary your local candidate and get yourself in, or your preferred candidate. In this case, they got their preferred candidate and take over the party that way, right? Like rather than and it seems like I've been talking about quite a lot. It doesn't seem like the CPC or the OPC or the Liberal Party or anybody really at this point in time is really effectively speaking for the public at large. And while they continue to say that they are, it doesn't seem like they are, right? And this could be a path forward. This is written very sympathetically. Like this article is like, oh no, poor Lisa Raitt. But I'm saying this could be like a blueprint, right? Like, hey, these guys did it, so could you, right? If you really want to save that party, if you really want to use that party to your own political ends, well, I mean, this is a way to do it, okay? Lisa Raitt kicked off of riding executive by new candidate. In one foul swoop, 10 directors up for re-election in the Milton Conservative Riding Association were given the boot, including its high-profile former MP Lisa Raitt. The coup led by a new Tory candidate, Nadeem Akbar, who stacked his deck with 200-plus new voting members. The average turnout for an annual general meeting for the Conservatives in the Ontario riding of Milton is approximately 30. None saw the gang-up ousters coming. What broke my heart and the hearts of all of us, said the association vice president Daryl DeMille, was that One of those 10 was the former deputy leader of our party, Lisa Raitt. The riding's former MP and Stephen Harper cabinet minister who lost re-election in 2019 to Liberal candidate and gold medal Olympic kayaker Adam Van Coveren. Sorry if I've got that wrong. Full disclosure, this guy, the author, worked for Lisa Raitt as her speechwriter and communication advisor in the months leading up to the 2019 election. Akbar secured the coup with the votes of new riding members, and he had signed up after already having signed up 2,000 plus new members to easily secure the Tory party's candidacy. On his website, Akbar is described as a corporate IT consultant, 17 years, thousands of clients, blah, blah, blah. Nadeem Akbar is a trusted community leader. Upon him winning the community nomination, the president of the Milton Conservative Association said, with Akbar in place, they can now get to work. Our members in the riding have been looking forward to getting our candidate in place so we can get to work on bringing back ethical, intelligent, and compassionate representation to our federal government, said Lewis. So if they can do it, why can't you? Right? I don't know. Calgary police say an increase in violent thefts and robberies at liquor stores has led to the introduction of controlled entrances at 4 Calgary liquor stores. Patron Scan, a digital system that validates government issue IDs, aims to deter theft and keep employees safe. You guys have seen those videos. I've seen videos recently, not so recently since lockdowns began, but in leading up to lockdowns 2019, 2020, there's lots of videos of people walking into liquor stores and like literally filling their pants up with bottles of $70 and $80 alcohol, like 1.2 liter bottles of vodka, and they're all in plastic bottles. So they're just tossing them in their pants and they walk out. And people were starting to like confront them and to say, no, it's not safe. Don't do that. Blah, blah, blah. This is basically a passport system. They're trying to tie your license and everything into some kind of quick and easy pass system. But this person says, I will not shop at any liquor store that may scan my license to be allowed to shop there. There's way too much identity theft in this world as it is. Can you imagine if their system is hacked? Yeah. I mean, common sense stuff, right? But the thing is, common sense isn't reigning right now. Even this, some Canadian says, I just heard back from the CHRC, the Canadian Human Rights Commission, regarding my complaint against the Alberta Human Rights Commission. In a nutshell, without any supportive scientific evidence, they're adamantly, not essentially, towing the government line and violating disability rights on Canadians. See quotes on the next post. Quote, being required to wear a mask does not violate a person's human rights when the public health is at stake. And if you can't wear a mask for a reason that is protected by human rights law, such as a disability, you may be able to ask an employer or service provider for accommodation. However, if that accommodation puts others at risk, it may not be possible. I would love to see if they can prove that a healthy, unmasked person puts other people at risk. How would they prove that? Very interesting. Very interesting. We'll head over to Rumble after this group, I think. Or maybe the next one. We'll see. Great news, says Derek Sloan. A judge has refused Ontario Attorney General's motion to lock down Almer's Church of God today. Contempt charge against Almer pastor, who will proceed on May 13th, but counsel will be allowed to cross-examine the regional chief medical officer regarding the health risk. So that's good. That's something, right? Here's Hildebrandt, and he's Pastor Hildebrandt, and he's speaking. I'll give him about a minute, maybe. I'll play it till it stops making sense to be continued. Here we go.
This morning we came here with somewhat of a heavy heart, not knowing what the outcome would be, not knowing if the judge would rule that the church doors would be locked up and that we would be fined. But we thank God this morning for answering prayer. God still is on his throne, and prayer and fasting does move his arm. We thank God this morning that the judge ruled at least until May 13th that the doors will remain open and that there will be no fines issued. Until then, we look to the Lord to continue to...
Oops. Sorry about that. That was a bit of a harder cut than I'm used to, so apologies there. However, I think that that's good news overall and encouraging. And here's something to, I don't know, dampen that enthusiasm, that encouragement. Calgary court issues warrant permitting police to do anything necessary to enter pastor's church and arrest him. Law enforcement is authorized to do anything necessary to carry out the arrest. So this is this is Calgary, and Rebel's done a good job at reporting on this, so I won't double it, but here's Rebel News on it. Calgary police obtained secret warrant to use any force necessary to disrupt the church service. Please go to savearthur.com and help us do everything we can to save Pastor Arthur. Donate there. I think the legal work that Rebel's doing is good. I think it's strange to focus all the time on crowdfunding. I mean, sure, yeah, it's a good cause and all that, but okay. These will be the last two. Here's the government has been looking into further travel restrictions, further airplane reduction in flights, etc. And this is Brian Lilly at the Commons Health Committee just moments ago. Ian Stewart, President of Public Health Agency of Canada, said that he has prepared advice to the federal government on stopping domestic travel, including flights between provinces, not implemented yet. Here we go. This is on that email in October. Here we go.
Thank you. Have you prepared any advice to the government regarding potentially stopping or reducing interprovincial flights?
We have looked at different scenarios for reducing movement, so
that would include providing advice regarding potentially stopping or reducing interprovincial flights?
In the range of things that we've considered, we certainly have thought about that topic.
So they're thinking about that at least. And the problem with that is I wonder how far beyond stopping interprovincial flights would they stop international flights, right? If you don't have to go to a meeting in Calgary from Ontario, or a meeting in Alberta from Ontario, or a meeting in BC, then you certainly don't need to go to like New York or Florida or anything like that, right? Right? Interesting. It's very, very scary. Very scary what's going on. And the last one here. Hadu says Canada will come up with a certification. I'm not going to try that again. To allow COVID clear passengers, Canadians, to travel again. COVID clear Canadians. So just get this COVID test and you get a certificate that you can travel. It's just a papers, please. Papers, please. Very concerning. Very concerning. I don't like where any of this is going. It's very, very difficult to believe it's all for our safety. Difficult to believe that everything that the government is saying is 100% true and not influenced in any way by anybody else. Okay, head over to the other places to watch the redacted part of the show. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out SpeakingMoistly.co. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. All right, welcome back to the